What if attention isn't just a skill, but a spiritual faculty, an important one? What if ADHD isn't just a disorder, but a sign of deeper disconnection? And what if the most urgent battle of our time isn't actually political or economic, but cognitive? This episode isn't just about neurodivergence, it's about the soul's ability to stay centered in a world of chaos. So let's talk about ADHD and why mastering our attention might actually be the next evolution of consciousness. Hi, I'm James, and welcome back to the Quantified Soul, where we explore how consciousness evolves, how the mind becomes clear, and how mathematics, neuroscience, and ancient wisdom are converging to transform our world. In today's episode, I want to explore a bold idea that ADHD isn't just a neurological quirk. It might be a civilizational alarm bell, a signal that our very ability to remain conscious is under attack. Because if you think about it, attention isn't optional, it's foundational. And if we can't direct it, we can't evolve. We often talk about being conscious like a switch, but consciousness isn't binary. It has structure, it has layers, and it has functions. I think one of the most overlooked functions is attention, because attention is what shapes consciousness into something usable, something we can build with, learn from, and act through. Think of attention as the steering wheel of your awareness. If your hands aren't on it, you're not driving. You're being driven by impulse, by distraction, basically by the loudest stimulus in the room or in your head. And here's an uncomfortable truth. In most people, the wheel is spinning on its own. It's on autopilot. I mean, we like to believe we're the author of our own thoughts. But let's be honest, most of the time, we're passengers. Our attention is often hijacked constantly by devices, by trauma loops, and by unintegrated parts of our psyche, each screaming for airtime. It's not just distraction, it's disintegration. And ADHD, it's not always a deficit of attention. It's often a surplus, scattered across too many channels, like a radio picking up every station at once. That's not just chaos, that's incoherence. Now, it's not a character flaw, it's just a crisis of coordination. And in ontological terms, it may be a failure of resonance. So let's start with the metaphysical. Ontological mathematics tells us that our soul is a frequency domain, a structured wave function made of thought itself. And when our thoughts are in harmony, they're more coherent, we feel clarity. But when they're dissonant or scrambled, we might feel anxious, lost, or scattered. ADHD in this light isn't just a brain issue. It's a waveform issue, a tuning issue. And if the brain is the projection of our soul's frequencies, then ADHD is a kind of distortion in that projection. It's the spiritual equivalent of a fogged lens, where focus is possible, but things are just misaligned. Not broken, just untuned. I thought Dr. James Fadiman said really well that the goal isn't necessarily to become just oneself, but to be the right self at the right time. And if you think about it, that's kind of what attention does. It lets you decide which part of your inner orchestra takes the lead. If you can't choose which instrument is playing, you don't have a symphony, you have noise. And here's where this becomes more than just self-help. Because consider, if you can't govern your own mind, how are we ever going to govern a civilization? What we're witnessing isn't just a rise in ADHD, it's a collapse of internal governance. And that collapse echoes outward, into culture, into politics, into every decision we fail to make with clarity. So what do we do? Well, it starts with remembering that attention is trainable. Through practices like meditation and cognitive reframing, yes, all those things, but also through techniques like neurotherapy, particularly neurofeedback. This is one of the most powerful tools we have available. It's not speculative, and it's highly measurable. With a quantitative EEG brain map, we can actually see the dysregulated networks that drive inattention. and then we can design protocols to retrain them. And the nice thing is, unlike medication, this doesn't suppress the signal, it tunes it. This is really soul work. It's not just improving quality of life so we can study or pay attention at work. And if we add in targeted biochemical support, addressing things like methylation, dopamine, and other nutrient pathways, the transformation can become even more powerful. Because the fact is, the brain you're born with isn't the one you have to live with. The brain that lived experience has given you doesn't have to be the one you're stuck with. So let's go a little deeper. What if most of our attention problems aren't neurological or even spiritual, but cultural? We've been training ourselves into fragmentation. Phones, scrolls, notifications, all these dopamine spikes. We live in the attention economy, but the currency is our consciousness. And what are we buying with it? Nothing worth keeping, probably. We're all developing something called conditioned attention deficit trait. It's kind of a socially constructed form of ADHD. We're building a society that can't think straight, can't hold a thought steady, can't remember what it means to be still. And that's not just sad, it's dangerous. Okay, let's make this more concrete. So what does ADHD actually look like in the brain? Well, there's many types of profiles, but one of the most common patterns I see is frontal slowing. I often see this in the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC for short. Now, through a rationalist spiritual lens, we can imagine the prefrontal cortex, really a marvel of evolution, as the seat of our most important ability, rational thinking. We might even go as far as to relate this to the real crown chakra. Because in a universe made of mathematics and reason, why should the crown chakra be anything but the seat of reason itself? In plain terms, these frontal regions, the ones responsible for attention, motivation, and executive function, are underactive in ADHD. Instead of showing fast, focused brainwave activity, they're stuck in slower rhythms like theta waves, which we normally see in states of drowsiness or daydreaming. This theta slowing here indicates reduced blood flow and lower metabolic activity in the anterior cingulate cortex. And that's important because the ACC isn't just about focus, it's part of the brain's dopaminergic reward system. It helps regulate motivation, reward sensitivity, and the ability to stick with something, even when it gets hard. When this circuit is dysregulated, you're not just distracted, you're running on a kind of low power mode. That's what makes it so hard to initiate tasks, sustain effort, or even feel rewarded by progress. So here's a real example. We'll start with the surface tracings, like we always should do in quantitative EEG. At EEG site FZ, we can see the distinct slowing, this large, chunky, slow wave activity. Now we'll switch to some more conventional brain maps. This individual had 3 standard deviations above the norm in their frontal theta band, meaning that their brain was significantly out of sync with typical executive function. They weren't broken, they weren't lazy. It's not a problem like that. They were just, their brain was just misaligned. After a series of neurofeedback sessions tailored to reduce frontal theta and boost beta activity, you can see the change. Those frontal areas come closer to the normative range. And for this person, that meant improved focus, clearer thinking, and a genuine sense of agency. Of course, not all ADHD profiles look like this. There's fast wave patterns too, hyperactive anxious types. And some people show mixed presentations with frontal and other, perhaps parietal dysregulation. And that's why personalization matters. We're all different. Because remember, attention deficit isn't one thing. It's a signal issue. When we all have different signals. And when we learn to read that signal, we can learn to tune it. So ADHD isn't just a brain issue. It's a symbol of our deeper disconnection from structure, from coherence. And it's time we stopped calling that simply neurodivergence and started calling it what it is, a crisis of consciousness. But the good news here is that it is entirely solvable because attention isn't fixed. Attention is freedom in motion. And the path to spiritual awakening might just start, not with visions, not with psychedelics, both the humble act of learning to sit and pay attention, to focus, to stay on one thing, to be in the right self at the right time. Attention is really the interface between the soul and the world. Without it, consciousness can't act. You can't integrate, can't create, and can't evolve. But with it, we can become coherent, not just on the inside, but in how we think, how we love, and how we lead. This isn't just about eliminating difference. It's about recovering agency. It's about reclaiming the signal. And once we do that, we're no longer passengers. We become pilots. So, ADHD is real, but it's not the end of the story. It might actually be the beginning of a new way of thinking about how the mind, the soul, and even consciousness and the systems that shape us work. So don't settle for being scattered. Don't confuse divergence with disempowerment. Attention is very much a spiritual skill, so train it like your life depends on it. Because in a way, it does. Thanks for watching The Quantified Soul. If this resonated, if you struggled with focus or know somebody who has, share this video. Let's raise the standard for how we talk about attention, not just as a clinical issue, but as a spiritual challenge. And if you're ready to go deeper, beyond coping, beyond labels and workarounds, into real transformation, I invite you to also explore my neurotherapy practice, Peak Mind. At Peak Mind, I don't just help people manage and overcome symptoms, I help them reconnect to something deeper. Because this isn't just about the brain, it's about your being. So if that's something that you want to reclaim, check out the links in the description to this video. And if you're curious to where this all leads, please subscribe to the Dream of Matter on Substack and stay tuned. We're just getting started.